Welcome to Legacy Cast, where we talk about your story, your way, and what are you doing to make sure that people know about you many generations from now. Welcome, Legacy Cast listeners. This is your host, James Snow, host of the Legacy Cast, and we're all together here at the family-friendly, most of the time, place where we get to talk to people about what they're doing in their life that is really going to make a difference. And when people hear about legacies, obviously they think about sometimes money, but that's not always what we talk about, because we're talking about a bigger picture. It's people telling their story their way, so that the world knows that they lived what they were passionate about, what they cared about, what they did to make a difference in the world, and ultimately what's going to be told about them many generations from now. I have a guest with me today, Carey Green, who does also do some podcasts. So this is going to be kind of fun. And Carey, welcome to the program today.
Hey, James. Thanks so much. Glad to be here.
So, Carey, like I was mentioning, you're not a stranger to podcasts. So, I guess that's part of maybe part of what you're playing into, your legacy, your story, as far as making a difference that's going to, resound. And, like when you throw a rock into a pond, it creates ripples that go all the way across to the other side. And so, maybe that's part of what you're doing. But when you hear the concept of legacy, what comes to mind first?
Yeah, the very first thing that comes to mind for me is two things that both start with the letter F, strangely enough, faith and family. I really believe that my family is the most important legacy that I leave behind. And the most important part of that is that I teach them how to have faith in their creator and how to walk a life of integrity. And so that's where I put most of my focus. My wife years ago bought me a t-shirt that was actually copied from Dr. Laura, and it said, my real job is at home. And I really believe that.
Yeah. And I'm completely 100% on the same page with you. People that know me the best, know that at the center of everything that I'm doing, both in business and life, faith is the center piece. And, first faith, then family, then finances. So, and it's always in that order. And so it's good to hear that, other people are incorporating that as really the foundation of what they're doing in their legacy building. Because, as we're commanded, we're supposed to build a legacy for multiple generations. It's something that goes all the way back to, for myself, being a person of faith, that it's in Scripture that, Proverbs 13:22, we're to build a legacy that's going to last to our children and our children's children. And, the righteous people do that. And so, obviously that, to me, that's a very important consideration, not only when I'm doing things from a business level, but when I'm doing things from a personal level as well. What am I doing that's going to impact those around me? Am I, leaving a mark that's going to make people better for having known me? Do you feel also that that's something that people should actively consider, not only in their business world, but also in their personal world?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the illustration you gave of the rock being thrown into the pond is very apt. It's hard, well, actually impossible to calculate the impact that one life can have on the world at large. And I think we do that primarily through our families by raising children who are, committed to their faith and committed to doing good in the world. But we also do that just through the interactions that we have, whether it be business or neighborhood or community or, wherever we are to be lights in the world. We're not here by accident. So it's one of those things that really drives me, not in an unhealthy way, I hope, but in a motivational way. I don't want to die and have people saying at my funeral, "Oh, he had so much potential." That would just kill me if I wasn't dead already. Because I want to live up to my potential. I want to do what I've been called to do.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you kind of put that word in there of what we're called to do, because ultimately, every person is endowed with certain gifts and certain callings that I feel we should tap into, because even the things that we choose as a career, for us to be truly happy and joyful, we should be tapping into those things that is our calling, and it is our gift. If we're tapping into those things, it's like the saying goes, where if you do what you enjoy, you never work a day in your life. It kind of goes back to that same concept of when you're doing those things that are your natural calling and your gifts, then you really don't feel like you're working, and you're able to bless other people and compound that effect.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Do you feel like that's something that we should also correlate into our businesses? Not only using our natural callings, but to correlate in the whole legacy concept.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't see any point in spending hours a day building a business, actually more hours a day than I spend doing anything else except sleep, and not having it be aimed toward a legacy. It doesn't make sense to me. Now, naturally, we need to put food on the table for our families and be providers and be responsible, all those sorts of things. That's just a matter of good stewardship. But, I think eventually, maybe not right away for everyone, because you don't always know exactly what your calling is right off the bat. But eventually, we've got to figure out what is it that will bring maximum impact from our lives. And maybe it is as simple as living a life of integrity and passing that down through your family. But if it's at all oriented toward a business, I believe there's a higher calling than just making money.
Sure. And when you're looking at your business, for example, and we'll look at it from the CEO standpoint, what would you say maybe a few things are that you really think about? Maybe hopefully they don't keep you up at night too much, but perhaps they do. What are a few things that are really pressing issues that you think about with your business?
Yeah, the most important thing as far as my business is that we're doing things with integrity, and that starts with me as the founder, but it also starts with how I treat my team. If anyone is working with me or for me, they are my first responsibility, not the bottom line, not the products that we provide. It's the team.
Sure.
And so we make that pretty blatant on our website that our team comes first. And our belief is that if we treat our team like gold, they're going to repay our clients in gold. And the clients actually benefit much more when the team feels cared for. So I love being able to provide for people, not just financially, but a place to work that they really love to work, and try to craft a culture that is enjoyable and motivating and actually empowering for people. I have people on my team who have shared with me dreams of starting their own business someday and being, no longer a part of my team. And I'm all for that. I want to encourage them and equip and empower them for that, because they have a calling on their life that's probably bigger than being a part of my team. So I want to fuel that any way that I can.
Oh, absolutely. And so, obviously that would take some sort of a strategy, I would think, to incorporate that both on a personal level and a business level. Is that correct?
Yeah, it definitely does. You can't just randomly do things and expect it's going to go much of anywhere. You've got to have a way you're going about it. And for us on our team, it starts with the interview process. I mean, we are very careful about who we add to our team, because we want people whose values are aligned. We want people who have the same kind of team-oriented and can-do spirit that not only helps our team to thrive, but serves our clients well. And so strategy, man, it starts from day one.
And from a business owner standpoint, even having a strategy, I run into when I'm working with people, obviously from a finance side of the world, but when I'm working with people, they may or may not have spent the time putting together a strategy in the beginning when they started their business, and it surprises me how many people actually do that. That they go into business maybe not having done the full business plan in the very beginning, or haven't put together the time and effort to create a financial strategy for their business. Is that something that you think is important from your standpoint?
I do, but I have to admit, you're talking about me. I started my business without much strategy involved. Sure. I just had to put food on the table. It was a situation where I transitioned out of a career into the unknown and just had to get some money coming in. And so I did that. And as the business began developing and I began seeing there was more potential than what I was currently doing, I had to learn how to strategize real quick. And so I've iterated on that a lot of times over the years, and modified and pivoted and changed it and refined it.
Sure.
But the point is that you start with some kind of a vision. You can't just be shooting in the dark for your entire career as a CEO or a founder. You've got to have a vision, because if you don't, you won't be able to attract a team that knows where you're going, because you don't even know where you're going. And it's important that you have alignment in that direction with your team. So I think that kind of purpose and that kind of strategy is what attracts clients, because they understand what you're about, because you know what you're about. And it's not a thing where people just come to you because of your service. They come to you because of you and because of your values and your integrity and your direction. And so strategy is a huge part of that.
Yeah. And I found that, really the value, obviously there's value in, having that put together, not only just because, at some point you might need to, seek, investors or lenders or what have you, but really the true value is when you have that already put into place. It's kind of like a roadmap when you go on vacation. It's good to know, what's going to be coming around the next turn before you get to it. And it takes a lot of the pressure off of you at the helm of the company when you know that you've already put together some sort of a plan and you know what's going to be happening down the road, and you've accommodated for that and you've allowed for that, so that you're not really spending a lot of energy and effort, at the very time that it's happening, trying to figure out, okay, what's next, because you've already thought about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. You are able to handle the unexpected a lot better when you have a plan in place of your general direction and how you're going to get there. Because you can be derailed if you don't know where you're going. But if you know where you're going, you just see this as an opportunity to refine your process or an opportunity to refine your strategy. Because those inadvertent obstacles and unknowns are the things that help you make your strategy stronger and to make your processes better. And they're all a part of what I believe the divine purpose of God brings into our lives to help us get to the point he has for us. That old saying, no pain, no gain, is entirely true when it comes to business. Yes.
I do agree with you there. So what do you think perhaps maybe some of the most common reasons are that new entrepreneurs are either failing when they go into business, or they just give up? What do you think some of those are?
Well, I think the main reason is they don't realize at the outset how hard it's going to be. There's so much junk going around on social media, especially about, I made 6 figures in 2 months and promising to teach you how to do the same. And it gives you this impression that it won't be much work and it won't take much time and it'll come rather easily. And none of that is true. True entrepreneurship is a blood, sweat, and tears thing. And it's a thing that you have to have a clear vision of what you're shooting for so that you don't give up. I believe Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, is a powerful testament to that. The reason he sold so many copies is because it resonates with people. They realize, oh yeah, I do need something bigger that I'm aiming toward, not just making money, not just trying to get rich. There's got to be purpose behind what you do. And so if you start out with this idea that it's going to be easy and it's going to come quickly, man, you're in for a rude awakening. And I see so many people quit because they didn't really start with a determination that no matter what it takes, they are going to make it happen. And I would say that's the biggest reason that many businesses fail.
Yeah. And obviously, not setting, not planning for, maybe the financial aspect of, the first 3 to 5 years. I've seen that also as something that pops up as, people jump in, they jump in the deep end of the pool, so to speak, and haven't really planned for that long term. And maybe they're just not ready to do a entrepreneurial venture full time. Perhaps they should keep some sort of other thing going on at the same time while they try to, build that entrepreneurial vision, because, it is so difficult. 90% of people that start something are not able to finish it. And so being an entrepreneur is not easy. It's not for the faint of heart. And so, I'm encouraged by people that do, consider that. And, maybe they're working a job while they're building a business. That's certainly a smart thing to do in many cases.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one thing that you brought up there reminds me that too many of us, myself included, when we start, are not well educated about what we are going to be facing as entrepreneurs. Right. Too many of the coaches out there and too many of the courses that you see online, especially, don't tell you how hard it's going to be. And they don't tell you the importance of creating a 3 to 5 year plan for your finances. And they don't tell you the vital needs that you have of strategy and planning and a clear direction. All they're doing is trying to sell you their next level up on their products or their next level up on their coaching. And that's a disservice. It's really a disservice because it's setting you up for eventual failure. It may come after some successes and some revenue that you've generated, but in time, man, it's really going to pan out badly for you. And so I think your idea of starting with something as a side hustle is a great thing, because if that's really what I had to do. And if you start with something as a side hustle and you can endure through that and you can persevere through that, you have what it takes, because it's much harder to do as a side hustle because your attention is split. And so if you can do it there, you'll be able to do it once you're able to turn to full time.
Yeah, and I personally, I didn't really have the option of the side hustle thing because, my decision was made forced by a layoff from a corporate job. And so when I started my entrepreneurial journey, it was, one day I was employed and the next day I'm not. And what do I do? And so I was literally thrust into the fire and had to learn as I went. And so, my experience has come through harsh failure. And so, it's like, the saying, hindsight is 20/20. If I'd have had a choice, obviously I would have rather had an easier transition into the world, but it has taught me what to warn people about. And that kind of leads me in with my next point here is, what are some of the roadblocks that you've found through your experience, Carey, that you would warn new entrepreneurs to watch out for?
Boy, that is such a revealing question. There's so many answers you could have to that. I think for me is not to let your ambition outpace your ability. I have all kinds of dreams and all kinds of ideas that happen almost on a daily basis, and I want to make all of them happen now. And I found a tendency to jump into things too soon, jump into things before the thing before it was completed, to try to iterate and change my direction before I'm really certain that the direction I'm on isn't going to work. It's easy as an entrepreneur. I think it's part of how we're wired to want to pursue that next shiny object, but we've got to learn patience and perseverance and sticking with a course of action until we have reason to know it's not going to work, and then pivot quickly, get out of it and try something different. But that is a big danger point, I think, is trying to do too many things at once and getting your eyes off your goal.
Yeah. And, there's certainly nothing bad about having many different verticals or many different income streams as an entrepreneur, because that does help. When you can take the pressure off of one direction by having other directions that help, fill in the financial void at least. But at the same time, like you said, that shiny object syndrome, I suffer from that myself, where I'm working on one thing and then something else, might pop up and ooh, squirrel, and my attention just quick, diverts over to the side there. And, it's something that I have to work on. I have to be very constant and very deliberate about that. Very intentional.
Yeah.
In fact.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm finding that I have to discipline myself to set those ideas aside and just let them kind of marinate for 2 or 3 months before I take any action. And usually within that time, I'm either too consumed with my present project to even think about it again, or it rises to the top as something I should take a closer look at. And so just being patient. Yes. I mean, the opportunity is still going to be there. I can discern usually later from a more seasoned perspective than I can from the immediate idea.
Yeah, I found, over the years, and, obviously through, like I say, through some painful learning experience, that the knee-jerk reaction of when you see something there, and just to let it sit there for a little while, like you mentioned, and just let that opportunity marinate and grow a little bit, it's going to itself either self-eliminate, or it's going to grow to a point where you see, okay, that's really something I need to consider. But if we do that knee-jerk reaction, then we're probably setting ourselves up for a little bit of failure and angst in the process by, trying to divert ourselves too quickly.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you.
So as far as maybe some support and resources, obviously there's lots of different support resources, maybe, SCORE being one of those, Small Business Administration being one, Chambers of Commerce. Those are kind of some of the obvious ones that a lot of people look for to help them start their business ventures. What are some of that you've come across maybe that we don't think about? Some of those support groups or resources that are out there.
Yeah. Well, most of what I've learned from has been podcasts and books. Mm-hmm. So I mentioned Start With Why by Simon Sinek. That's a good book, I think, for anybody to read to just kind of get your mind around the idea of a bigger purpose behind what you're doing. Right. Because like I said, that's got to fuel everything. I think also there is another book out there called The CEO Mindset. I can't remember the author off the top of my head, but a very good book, a very good, helpful, practical way of thinking, okay, if I'm going to be in charge of this thing I'm calling a business, what does that look like and where am I headed in that role eventually? And then podcasts, man, there's all kinds of podcasts out there. I listen to everything from sales podcasts to marketing podcasts to SEO podcasts. I mean, it all depends on what sort of business you're going to be doing and whether it's going to be online or offline. But there are so many good podcasts out there that enable you to really think through what it takes to build a business and take elementary steps. I think my one caution on podcasts, though, is to be selective in the topics you listen to. Just listen to the things you need right now. Don't get overwhelmed listening to Facebook ads and Google ads and how to do YouTube and how to do this and that when those aren't the things you're really needing to focus on right now. I subscribe to a lot of podcasts that I don't listen to every episode. And it's because some of the episodes are just topics I'm not dealing with right now. And so I just don't want to overwhelm my brain waves with too much information.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you mentioned podcasts because I'm here in North Texas, and anybody that's familiar with North Texas, we can easily have windshield time, going from meeting to meeting that's going to last 1 or 2 hours, between appointments. And so, using that windshield time as we're having to commute is very important. Are you listening to talk radio that's just going to be talking about, politics or this thing or that thing? Or are you spending your time with really, investing in your own self-development and your professional development, and filling that with podcasts or different experts and influencers that can build on what you have and what your knowledge is, so that you're gaining something every single day and every single minute that you're spending, using that time wisely.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things that, I've found myself, I wouldn't say addicted to podcasts, but man, real close. I turn them on every time I get in the car by myself, every time I'm on the treadmill, every time I'm out walking. I just use that time because it's fun to learn and it's fun to find things that you can apply to your business. So I totally agree with you there.
Yeah. And I could very, very easily, just sit around and listen to, like politics radio and just what's going on in the country, because there's so much happening. But at the same time, I also have to remember, okay, I need to be smart about that time. And so, fortunately I have, the smart technology in my car. So I can just quickly, flip on a podcast and let that run for, the whole commute. And it's really, better time spent because, I'm learning things that are actually going to give me some growth, and it's going to be, income generating knowledge as opposed to something that's going to, get me riled up. And
yeah, I've been there. Have my own personal earthquake in my car as I'm listening to talk radio. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's fun stuff to listen to, but oh man, it makes you want to get that tinfoil hat and put it on sometimes.
Yeah.
So since we're both people of values and people of faith, we're sort of in a time in society that I found is very interesting, because a lot of people, have started really injecting their belief structure into their business. Used to, it was sort of you keep your beliefs and your business separate, and you don't want to commingle those things. But nowadays it seems like maybe a lot of people are starting to do that, and even I personally, I don't shy around it. When people come through my door to work with me as an advisor, they can't help but know that that's something that's core to my business. And And so I find it interesting, when people do inject that into their own ventures. Is that something that you do, and how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I totally agree that it's happening more all the time from a variety of perspectives, not just a Christian faith perspective.
Right.
You see yoga instructors who very much integrate their Eastern beliefs into their practice and that sort of thing. So I agree with you. It's happening all the time. I think it's a needed thing, honestly. I think it's a healthy thing because it enables your clientele to know who they're working with, and perhaps even if they're similarly aligned, I have a greater degree of trust in you right away. In our business, we do put our beliefs right out front. I mean, it's not like we have a doctrinal statement on our website or anything, but we do have a page. I refer to it as our why page, and it tells people the kinds of podcasts we will work with because we're a podcast production company, and the kinds of podcasts we will not work with. We're just very clear about it and upfront, and we make it clear why we have those standards. And it's not that we're saying you shouldn't podcast about that or you can't podcast about that. It's just saying we won't help you podcast about that. So there are plenty of services out there that can help people do it. It's just a matter of them finding those services that are more closely aligned with them. And honestly, it's doing a service to those people, because if they were to work with me and I were to work with them, we would have nothing but frustration and problems because we wouldn't see eye to eye in the end result, the final product that we're trying to produce. And so I think it's a necessary thing, and it's actually a helpful thing across the board.
It is, and I think that there's a lot of mutual respect that happens there, because when you know where the person is coming from, then if that is something that you yourself can't abide, and then you shouldn't be doing business with them.
Right.
And it's okay to part as friends and shake hands and say, I appreciate how you believe, but that's something that I personally. I can't go there, but maybe somebody that can help me that is more aligned to my position, and vice versa.
Yeah, exactly. We try to make it real clear on our site that we're not against the people who we can't work with. We just have different values than they do. And so we want to help them find someone else that could be aligned with them.
Yeah, and I found that if you try to force the situation to where if you're trying to force a situation with somebody that's really not compatible, then at some point it's going to fall apart. And so
absolutely.
Save yourselves the time and effort and really the wasted money that comes from it, because you will ultimately waste a lot of time and money trying to force a relationship that should not exist.
Yeah, and let me just give a little personal caution there from my own experience. The temptation is very strong at first because you need money coming in to align yourself with people who in your gut are not good for you to work with. And you do it anyway because you need the income, you need the revenue. And it may work for a month or 2 or 3, but you start having these issues come up, and they don't even have to be conflicts. They're just things that make you realize, this wasn't the best choice. And you wind up regretting those things. And sometimes you wind up actually souring what could have been a good relationship with a person who you don't see eye to eye with, but who you could have been colleagues with. And it's sad. It's sad. And we do it because we let the money talk louder than our values. And I think we've got to stick with our values first.
Yeah. When that desperation comes in, it really creates you end up having to choose one of two paths. Either you choose the path of, when you're doing that, one or two things will happen, I guess I should say. That either you kind of have that regret later that, okay, I really should not have done that, or you go down a path that directs your business in a course that you should not have done, and then it's hard to bring your business back to your core values because other people have learned that, okay, well, he will work with this kind of person, and so then you start attracting a lot of those type people, and then you're sort of snowballing that effect of bringing more and more of the ones that really should not be doing business with.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And that in itself is sort of a powder keg.
Sure.
So as fair warning on that for those listening, that stick to your guns. Stick to your belief system. Stick to your core values, and you're going to be okay on that. What was something, Carey, that you discovered in life that maybe you should have done earlier on, that you didn't do, that maybe was important?
Hmm.
Kind of that hindsight.
I think I should have. Yeah. Yeah. I should have developed better and more refined systems for how my team was going to do their work. When I first started bringing on team members, it was just my oldest son. He's 26 today. So he was probably, 22, 23 at the time. And I just made a lot of assumptions about his knowledge of what we were doing and how it should be done and all of that. And, he was green to the whole thing, and I had been doing it for a few years. And it was unfair of me, first of all, to expect that of him. But secondly, was not good for the business because it caused things to be dropped. It caused things to fall through the cracks. It caused bad products and services to be provided to people. And it soured some relationships because we didn't provide what we said we were going to provide. And systems that are repeatable and easy to pass along and systematic to make sure that nothing gets dropped are vital to any business. It doesn't matter if it's a service business or a professional consulting kind of a business, similar to what you do, James. You've got to have some kind of systems that enable you to provide the same quality of service every single time. Mm-hmm. And man, I should have done that sooner. I'm kind of a systems guy naturally, but I didn't know the degree to which I needed to do that. And I wish I had known that earlier.
Yeah, that conversation sometimes even goes into the direction of when people are thinking about the succession of their company. And you're mentioning your son, for example. A lot of business owners, we sort of have that blind spot that we think that obviously our kids want to take over our company. Maybe they don't.
Yeah.
And just taking time to respect them as individuals and ask that hard question of, do you really want to fill my shoes when I decide that I'm going to step away from the wheel?
Yeah.
And, you might find out that the son or the daughter does not want to do that because
you're totally right.
You need to make that planning.
Yeah, you're totally right. I have two grown daughters who both are in their early 20s, and they both have been on job searches and hunts at various times. And I've offered, you can work for me, and they both kind of cock their eyes sideways and go, I don't think I want to do what you do. And you have to be okay with that. You really do.
Yeah. And then plan accordingly.
Yeah.
Because,
exactly.
when you're not able to be at the wheel, maybe, age or illness or what have you, does happen, which, it will happen.
Yeah.
And, when somebody else steps in, it's not going to be able to be the family. And so who's going to step in and how are you going to accommodate that?
Yeah. Or are you going to sell the business? I mean, setting yourself up to be able to sell is a very strategic thing as well. There's a lot of systems that have to be in place and separate bank accounts and all that kind of stuff to be able to pass it on to someone else. And we often don't think about those things.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I think the statistic right now is about 40% of companies liquidate because they have not had that conversation.
Yeah.
So it's scary. It's scary if you don't do those things. So we'll spend a few minutes here kind of leaning towards a little bit more personal questions, a little less business. We'll still have some business involvement there, but a little bit heavier on the personal direction. When you're starting your particular ventures, though, what were some of the hurdles that you faced, in your life that you had to overcome when you're starting a business?
Well, I think the first one I've already alluded to was just the need to get food on the table. We were stepping out of a career into the unknown. And at that time, we lived in a mountain town in Colorado. And I went around looking for jobs that could fill the void. And there were none that could adequately supply for our family budget. So I had to figure some things out. And so that feeling of desperation of getting money into the coffers so that you can actually feed your family, man, that's a powerful motivator. And it also can be a very discouraging thing because you've been so long being able to provide and suddenly you can't. And it's hard. It's kind of a double-edged sword. I also think time was the big issue, figuring out how to budget your time and how to handle it well so that you can make the most of it and use it wisely. We all have the same 24 hours, but man, we sure can squander a lot of that with everything from Netflix to extra hours of sleep that you really don't need at that time in your life. So I'm not one to say shortchange yourself when it comes to sleep, but for a season, you may need to get up an hour and a half early so that you can get some business done to get that food on the table.
Well, that's true. That's a fair point there. So, were those particular things obvious to you? Yeah, or was it maybe you kind of stumbled upon the answer to how to overcome that?
You mean, was the solution obvious?
Yes, yes.
No, the solution was not obvious. It took me a lot of mistakes to figure out both of those things. I tried a lot of online ventures before I landed in the one that I'm on that actually provided for the family. And I also tried lots of ways to do the things I needed to do in order to pull off the online ventures, sadly to the detriment of my family at times. Rather than realizing, hey, I should not be asking them to sacrifice, I should be sacrificing in order to make it happen. And so, learn the lessons the hard way, but when you do, you generally don't forget them.
That's true. That is very true. So when you started your online businesses, though, maybe talk me through what that process looked like.
Well, it was a lot of learning and a lot of mistakes. I followed quite a few different approaches, trying to use Google AdWords, trying to sell courses, trying to create free content that people could use that would then lead into things I had to sell. And it was just a process of both refining what it takes to do those things and to do it well, but also a process of refining my vision, like we were talking about earlier, what I really wanted to do. What is it that I had that I could add to the world? And I've bounced back and forth from extreme different topics and areas of expertise, trying to find that thing. And I landed in a place I didn't expect to land, but it's one that I feel I'm very well equipped for and that I actually enjoy. And it's been a long, hard road getting there, but it's been a very good journey.
Good deal. Good deal. So what compelled you to go in that direction? Was it there kind of like a light bulb moment, that proverbial aha moment that you saw that?
There really was. I was podcasting already myself, and so I knew the pain point of the time issue. You got to figure out the time to do your audio editing and write your show notes and post everything. I mean, it's one thing to record. It's another thing to actually publish. And so I had already experienced that myself, but hadn't thought of it in the sense of being a service that I could provide. And I was actually helping a friend who was doing some audio editing and things like that. And we were on a Skype call, and he just kind of out of the blue said, you should do this as a business. And it was one of the biggest light bulbs that have ever gone on for me. It was just so obvious that there was a service opportunity there that many people could benefit from and would actually desire. And so I began that moment trying to refine, okay, how would I price it and how would I provide the services and what could I do to get clients? The wheels started turning from there.
Yeah. And, there's a whole world, in the monetizing your podcast that, people don't think about. And so, it's certainly something that, if it's appropriate for you, do your due diligence and look into it, because, that could be, one of those multiple income streams that you're looking for. Mm-hmm. So is there a different profession out there that maybe you've toyed with going into that, if you were not doing what you're doing currently, that you might entertain?
I don't know that there is. I've been in a number of roles throughout my working career. I started working when I was 15, and I've done lots of things. I was a pastor of small local churches for 20 years. That's the previous career I was in. And that actually, is more where my heart is than anything else. But I just really feel that calling is gone. And so running my own businesses, whatever they may be, really are what I feel wired for right now. And I've tried other things and just none of them ever float my boat.
Okay. So what would you say perhaps one of your greatest strengths are?
I think my greatest strengths are gifts that I've received from my maker. I feel like I'm a good teacher. I'm able to think things through in a systematic way and explain it to others. And then a tangent off of that is I'm able to create systems that work and to do all that. It's something I don't really take a lot of credit for because it just comes naturally. It's one of those things where when you're gifted at something, other people look at it and say, wow. And you look at it and go, what's the big deal? that's a true sign of being gifted, I think, because they see it as amazing and you see it as normal. And we all look at people like Michael Jordan and we say, wow, that's because he's gifted and we're not when it comes to basketball.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. No, yeah, I certainly would not want to be in his shoes, as it were. No, I'm not good at that. Is not my gift.
Yeah.
What would you say, kind of the opposite side of that coin, though? What would your greatest weakness be if you were to put that out there?
Yeah, I would say my greatest weakness is my pride and my defensiveness. Just last night was having a conversation with my wife, and we had a little bit of an argument, and after the dust was settling a little bit, she said, she asked me a question. She said, "What was that all about? Why were you so defensive, and why were you so eager, or not eager, but quick to argue?" And the only answer I had was because I'm just such a proud person. I didn't want to be wrong. I didn't want to say I was wrong. And that's nothing but a self-oriented kind of pride that is dangerous and is self-deceptive. And so, I struggle with that in my own personal life, but I struggle with it in business as well. It's a place where you've got to learn to take team member suggestions. You've got to learn to give them some buy-in and some authority, and let go of things and not be the one who's always in charge of everything. And it's been something I've had to intentionally work on in order to make both myself and my business better.
Yeah, and it's a bitter pill to swallow. I likewise, I struggle with the pride thing, because it's a huge one. And when the ugly pride beast rears its head, it can get in the way of a lot of stuff, and it can cause a whole lot of trouble. The first fall of man was ultimately pride. So it's been around forever, and pride is a hard thing to overcome.
Mm-hmm. It definitely is. And it's one of those things I know is never licked, but I'm constantly learning and growing and trying to overcome it in the day to day. I know the root's always going to be there, but day to day, I want to love people well, and I want to serve people well, and I don't want my pride to be in the way. So I'm constantly striving.
So when you're doing your getting your ideas together, letting those creative juices flow, is there a certain place that you go to, maybe a place in the house or nature or what have you, a place that you go to let those ideas happen?
Not necessarily a place, but there are some practices that definitely help me. I love charts, and I love visualization. So a whiteboard is powerful for me. Journaling is powerful for me. Just getting it out of my head and out in front of me where I can see it is helpful, because I get so many ideas in my mind that get jumbled. But when I can get them on paper or get them on the whiteboard, I can see the different components and relate them to each other in a logical way that I can't do just inside my head. Now I realize not all people are that limited. My wife, for example, she can think of 1,000 different things at once and keep them all separate. That's not me. I've got to get it out where I can look at it.
Yeah. So I guess you could say you're a doodler then, huh?
Yeah, in a way.
Pen to paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Like I was mentioning before we got on, I have notepads all across my desk here, and I've got scribble and hand scratch on all those things. It may not make sense to anybody else that looked at it, but it makes perfect sense to me, because that's I just have to get those thoughts out, vomit the thoughts on the paper, as it were.
Yeah.
So if you're to describe what you're doing from a business perspective at a very high level, we'll assume that one of our listeners is wanting to go in the direction that you've gone in, and they want to kind of follow those steps. How would you describe what you do?
Yeah, well, what we do is we provide services to people. So it's not a product-based business. It's a service-based business. We're doing something for people that they don't want to do for themselves. Very similar to the dry cleaner, cleans your clothes because you don't want to do it, or you don't have the technology to do it in that way. We do the same thing. And our target market is podcasters, is people who are producing an audio show or a video show of some sort, and they don't want to or don't know how to do all the back end work of editing and optimizing the audio and posting it to a website and all of that stuff. For whatever reason, that's not something they want to do. And so they're looking to have a service do that for them. And so we take care of all that for many clients every month. It's all the audio side, the show notes side. It's in all kinds of related resources that podcasters might use for promotion and gathering email addresses and all kinds of things like that. So it's a service-based business. It's aimed at providing a satisfying experience to the end client, where what we provide is not only of great quality, but the way in which we provide it is something that delights them. And that's exactly what we're aiming for.
Excellent. Yeah, and podcasting is becoming a big thing. So, for people that want to start, that venture, it's good to know that there is a service-oriented group such as yourself that's out there that can help streamline the process and make it a lot easier, because there is a lot of technical stuff that goes on the back end that you really don't think about. It's not just turning on a microphone and a camera and away you go. There is other stuff that goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people give advice on YouTube or on other podcasts about how to start a podcast. And having done this for almost 5 years with a lot of clients, I just have to caution people, there's a lot of bad information out there about how to do it that is either dated or was just misinformed in the first place. So if any of your listeners would like a free course on how to podcast, I have one available. I would love to make available to them. It's usually a $99 course. For your listeners, I'd love to make it available.
Yeah, and that will lead us to what the question after what I'm about to ask will be, is some of that contact information for you. So we'll get to that in a second. But the final question, I guess, my trivia question that I love asking people that most of my guests kind of don't like. What is the trivia question is, what is something about you that most people don't know? If they wanted to hear about Carey Green and they want to know something that is not very common knowledge, what would that be?
Yeah, let's see. I think something they don't necessarily need to know, but something they wouldn't know is that I once did clowning as a kind of a hobby sort of thing, the professional clown makeup and going to kids fairs and things like that. Yeah. For some reason, I just thought that would be a fun thing to do. There's a part of me that likes being the goofball behind the scenes. And for some reason, it's a lot easier when you have makeup on than it is just personally in a relational context. So yeah, I was a clown for a while, a literal clown.
Oh, wow. Yeah, maybe a little less vulnerable when you can kind of cover up and put on that mask, quote unquote.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I have a nephew that has a very strong dislike of clowns. So
yeah, it's funny. We have a good friend who really dislikes clowns, a grown man. And one of the times I was doing the clowning, I knew he didn't know who I was because he didn't know I did that. And so I followed him around all night on purpose, just tapping him on the shoulder and looking him in the eye. And he never figured out it was me.
Oh, that was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Carey, kind of going back to what I was just saying just a moment ago, people who want to get a hold of you and, they need to know kind of how to reach out, different, maybe social media contacts or other ways of contacting you. How do they go about that so they can reach out to you and take advantage of what your services are?
Yeah. Well, the best way to find out about the services is through our website. It's podcastfasttrack.com. And the best way to find me is if you Google me, you got to first of all have my first name spelled right. It's Carey, and then green like the color. And you'll find two Carey Greens. One is a basketball coach for Liberty University, and the other one is me. Mm-hmm. So I'm not the basketball coach. You can find me on any of the social platforms just about. And my email address is Carey@podcastfasttrack.com. I'd love to hear from anybody. And if they want to email for that free podcast course, I'd be happy to provide that.
Sure. Excellent, Carey. And I appreciate your time here on the program today. And like I tell everyone, I certainly look forward to an additional opportunity if you'd like down the road. Come back on the program and let us know what's going on in the world and different things that are new that would be of value. And until then, certainly have a great day, great week, and look forward to seeing you around the bend, my friend.
Yeah. Thanks so much, James.
Thank you, sir.